I will be discussing two strategies including verb action and checking for understanding. I will give a brief description and explanation of strategies as well as implementations for the two strategies. First off, I want to start with verb action, that is teaching irregular verbs through experience. Research found that it is important to provide experiences in contextualizing vocabulary to support students in connecting new vocabulary with their prior knowledge. In some of these studies, they found that acting out new vocabulary is mentioned as an excellent practice. Teachers can identify vocabulary that students are misusing or misunderstanding by watching the student's verbal and written responses. From a teacher's observation, they can plan experiences to support students' correct usage. A common misconception is when students overgeneralize irregular verbs and add ed to the end of words. They just add ed to the end of a verb. So, like, for example, if we were talking about saying that he ran, then they would just say that he runned, which is obviously not correct. For English language learners, this is also true. And so when teachers see this, they can provide experiences that move students toward the correct usage. So for this strategy, there are 8 steps in the process of the verb actions, and the first step is to observe and monitor the students' written work and identify verbs that are being misused. Second, it's important to plan active experiences to practice that correct usage of the identified words. Third, document the activity by taking photos of the students as they participate. Fourth, involve students in contributing to an irregular verb journal so they can keep track of what activities they're doing and just like how it's working. Fifth, they could create a chart. You would create a chart, bulletin board, or word wall to provide as a resource for the students so they can see these words over and over again throughout the classroom. Sixth, continue to observe students' oral and written usage to determine when something needs to be retaught or when something needs to be reviewed just as needed. Seventh, evaluate your approaches and learning experiences that take place. And last, continue to observe and identify new verbs and other vocabulary to teach them. So let's say that you're noticing students having trouble with verbs, with the verb throw and the verb catch. So an implementation that could be used in the classroom for these words is to first write the words so the students can see them and talk about how these verbs are showing that the action is already completed. So you would write something like, I throw the ball, I already threw the ball, I catch the ball, and I have already caught the ball. Then have the students toss a small ball or object with each other in the classroom. And as they're throwing it, you would say, I threw the ball. And when they catch it, they would say, I caught the ball. So you'd have the students start a journal for these irregular verbs, like I mentioned earlier, so they can keep track of what you've done and just make the writing and verbal connections. So for differentiation, you could have students write more in their journal if they seem to be struggling with those verbs or whatever that is happening, and then less, obviously, if they're not having difficulty comprehending. The next strategy that I have been assigned and will discuss is checking for understanding using questioning strategies to differentiate instruction. So when giving instruction to students, it's important to know what the students understand and ways to clarify any kind of misunderstanding before you continue moving forward with your material. So for all students, including English language learners, it's important that you check to make sure that the students comprehend, and this should be done by effective questioning. So also by observing and planning ahead. With English language learners, it's important to understand their level of proficiency because you'll be able to see and help support the student in participation and just being successful in comprehension. So through research, understanding questioning revealed lots of different things of how students respond. So for example, some research shows that some students see no response as the correct response, so they just don't respond at all. Also, sometimes students might not understand the information, but don't know how to way to communicate that they don't understand that effectively. So again, no response is the best response for them because they just don't know how to communicate that, which is also important why you need to know the levels of proficiency for your students. Disconnected phrases is also an indicator that students do not fully comprehend. So using questioning strategies to differentiate instruction involves a series of steps. First, the teacher must plan the format of questions ahead of time. Second, plan everyone responds to activities and encourage participation. Third, maintain visual contact with the learners. Fourth, provide an adequate wait time when students are processing a response. Fifth, be aware of body language. Sixth, reward your students for asking questions to provide incentives for them to participate, and them participating in you seeing their success is also encouraging for them to build on that. Seventh, continue to monitor both student understanding and the use of your questioning strategies. And next, teach a mini lesson that demonstrate using questioning to form a response. And lastly, adapt lessons based on the English language development levels. So this can be implemented in the classroom by using an activity like show me cards. And so in a lesson, a teacher would ask a question and everyone would respond using a visual card. So the cards would be different colors, symbolizing true or false. So, and these cards can be made in different colors, or all kinds of cards can be made to encourage all students to respond to check for understanding questions. So those are just two different strategies, and just some implementation, a description of them, and some implementations that you can put into the classroom.